You're listening to OPIS Talks, where you'll be in on conversations with insiders in the energy, chemicals, and environmental commodities markets. Guests share insights into the latest trends and innovations, industry challenges, and much more. Let's dive into the conversations that explore where the energy economy is headed, right here on OPIS Talks.
I'm Reagan Pritchard, the lead editor for the U.S. Gulf Coast Distillates Market for OPIS, as well as a contributor to our Worldwide Jet Fuel Report. You're listening to the first episode of our limited series on refined spot products. Today, we are talking about the global shipping and freight landscape in light of the ongoing conflict between the U.S. and Iran. Joining me is Tom Sosnowski, Associate Director of Global Marine Fuels for OPIS. Tom, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience and tell us about how the last few months have been for you?
Yes, I'm Tom Sosnowski, Associate Director, Global Marine Fuels for OPIS, the Dow Jones Company. And the last few months have been incredibly busy, chaotic, however you want to describe it. We've had a total transformation of the petroleum complex supply chain due to the ongoing Middle East conflict. And there's just been a total remapping of how products and crude oil originate, where they end up, and how they get there. And every day is sort of a new discovery of a different fundamental change to the market.
Absolutely. The shutdown of the Strait over the last 3 months has completely scrambled global product flows. We have around 1,600 vessels stuck in the Gulf of Persia. According to the International Maritime Organization, the IEA director has multiple times called this a global energy crisis. And you mentioned this, but since the conflict began, what alternative shipping routes are getting the most attention from all this redirected traffic?
Yeah, good question. One of the largest beneficiaries of this rerouting of ships has been around the Cape of Good Hope. What that has done is, well, it's been a boon for the bunker industry because bunker suppliers offshore Africa or in that region or along that route have seen such an increase in traffic that their business is good. That said, what that does is to avoid the Middle East, you go around Cape of Good Hope, it adds 10 to 15 days maybe of voyage time, and that all translates into okay, we've got higher crude and product costs. So now we have higher costs for shipping and higher freight rates to go around that. Freight rates have been off the map, and all that combines to put pressure on the market. Higher prices, less availability with the lead time. We've also seen the Panama Canal is hitting record rates for the amount of energy product going through it. We'll get to it later, but we've seen Gulf Coast product going to the West Coast, but we've seen the LP, we've seen crude. I mean, just to avoid the Middle East, we have U.S. crude going into Asia, which has been a big bump for that. There's also, it's pushed up the price of the cost of going through the canal because there's congestion. There's only so many slots available. People are bidding for those slots, outrageous prices. The canal can only support so much traffic a day, so there's delays there. All that, once again, works into higher costs for shipping, higher costs for delivery, higher costs of the final landed product. And also in the Middle East, we've had some people using some of the Red Sea route to take it off from Saudi Arabia, from the Yanbu terminal. Once again, all this ties back to that tied up strait and its ongoing failure to open completely or open much at all for that matter.
Yeah, the Yanbu terminal is a really interesting facet. It's almost a loophole. Saudi Arabia developed it back in the 1980s, specifically after the Iraq-Iran war, out of concerns of the closing of the Strait of Hormuz. Back in April, according to OPIS reporting, they actually did a record change and converted the parallel lines in order to move a record of 7 million barrels per day. And that's over land. But how are we seeing this product moving on water? Is there enough infrastructure available? We know that there was damage caused to the terminal itself from bombing from Iran early in this conflict. So are we seeing an increase of shipping vessels going out of there, and which way are they going? Are they going through the Suez, or are they risking it going down towards Yemen?
Saudi Arabia was very prescient in setting this up years and years ago, knowing that at some point we're going to need this. We're going to need this outlet. Now, How does it compare to the Strait of Hormuz? It really doesn't. I think the total max on the cross kingdom pipeline is about 7 million barrels. Now, that's running full capacity, which I believe they hit during this crisis. But then you get to the actual terminal itself, and the terminal can export maybe 4 million, 4.5 million barrels a day. Because once again, the infrastructure, I mean, how many ships can you get in? How many can you service? There's time, availability to fill ships. But also some of that pipeline also goes into storage too, and it goes into, I believe, some of the Western processing units in Saudi Arabia. So yeah, you say 7 million barrels. It's more like four to five that are actually being exported. And where's it going? I mean, it can go either way. It can go through Suez. It can go south. Most of that, a lot of it, I should say, not most, a very large amount is going to Asia. India, big final destination for that. China, huge destination for that, which makes sense for that route. You're seeing some going to the U.S. and to Europe also, but not in the quantities we're seeing there. The Yanbu terminal is doing its job, but it's kind of like a stopgap measure when you compare it to what goes through the strait. That's 20 million barrels a day, and you add that up to how many days we've been constrained there or blocked or however you want to describe it. The Yanbu can't make up for that. Does it help? Yes. The final solution obviously is getting that strait back open again.
You mentioned that some of it's going to the US, some of it's going to Europe. We know that currently the Gulf Coast is exporting crude at record rates. We're going to switch gears a little bit and we're going to switch over to the States. The Trump administration waived the Jones Act in March and then pushed the extension out to August back in April, so last month. Since that opened the door to foreign flag ships, there have been more than 50 foreign flag ships operated under that waiver since mid-March, according to data from the Department of Transportation Maritime Administration. In your experience, historically, has the waiver increased the number of port-to-port movements? So, for example, the big one you mentioned was moving from the Gulf Coast to the West Coast, the biggest producer to one of the biggest consumers of product. Or are U.S. players still prioritizing exports?
Right. Well, today being May 29th, I think we're up to like 55 or 60 waivers. I'm just speaking off the cuff here. I know it's increased, but I'm not 100% sure. But we're in that neighborhood. Yeah, I mean, you look at California. That's the first concern. And California is an island. Okay, it might as well be separated by water from the rest of the United States. I mean, we've seen refinery closures and the petroleum production industry under a lot of pressure in California. It's not pipeline friendly, hasn't been supplied a lot either by pipeline. So what do? We take products from the Gulf Coast, and now with the Jones Act waiver, we have more availability of ships. Freight rates are astronomical, but it can get it to California from the Gulf Coast. We've got gasoline, diesel, jet, crude for the few refineries operating out there. So it's a huge trend we've seen. But one of the things that's interesting with this is, okay, we're shipping all this diesel, especially, which kind of predicts blending components in the Gulf Coast for other fuels, like for bunker fuel. VLSFO is loosely based off of the cost of blending with ULSD derivatives, such as light cycle or things like that. That's pushed up the price of bunkers in the Gulf Coast, which is our biggest bunker import in the U.S. But anyway, back to California. Yeah, we've seen a lot going out there. But we've also seen East Coast Canada coming down to the East Coast of the U.S. We've seen East Canada going down to the Gulf Coast. We've seen it just opened up what can be delivered where. And freight rates, competing for the tonnage. So, that's high with the increased tonnage. And also, like I mentioned, Panama Canal being highly trafficked into these days because of the Middle East issues. A lot of crude being exported, record numbers going to Asia, Japan and elsewhere, searching for crude because you just want to avoid the Middle East. So what's a safer route? Well, Gulf Coast export crude or wherever to Canada through the canal. One of the bottom lines is that, the products go where the money is, and you've seen the price of products in California extremely high. So, you go where the arbitrage is, whether it's in California or it's Florida or it is, over to Asia. Price dictates a lot of that movement. But Yeah, there's a lot of Jones Act exempted ships moving product, and that's sort of the way it goes. The Jones Act is helping out a lot for areas that need product, whether it's U.S. or it's international or what have you, and that's a mechanism which is used when needed, and it's needed now, and that'll be continued to be used until things go back to what you would call somewhat of a normality. It could be weeks or months or what have you, but right now the Jones Act waiver is doing what it has to do, getting product where it's needed.
Lastly, even if the nations reach a deal that would definitively reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the logistical recovery is going to be extensive. According to Jaime Brito, the executive director of refining and oil products for CMA, sea mines would need to be removed, ships that are currently in the Gulf would have to exit and or load or unload cargoes. The broader oil and gas landscape along the Persian Gulf is going to have to recover, meaning repairs to refining, repairs to shipping infrastructure, while at the same time returning to normal operations in the oil fields as well as at the refineries. He maintains that it'll take around 18 weeks for all of these things to be happening in parallel with one another to completely return to a February 2026 business as usual standard. But realistically, once the green light's given, how long do you think, on your end, that it'll take for normal transit through the strait and global freight and shipping as a whole, because it looks very different now than it did 3 months ago, to really return back to a familiar look?
Right. Well, I think Jaime's spot on there with the 18 weeks. It may be a little bit longer. I mean, it's so hard to say, but definitely 18 to 22 weeks is an excellent target. That said, if everything moves along as we hope it moves along, once some sort of ceasefire slash peace slash compromise can be reached. But yeah, I would say that's a great timeline. But there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, the first thing we have to talk about is it going to be safe? Okay. One thing that we gloss over is, okay, the ship is worth this much, the oil is worth this much. Don't forget, you got human beings working on these ships. Okay. That's the last thing you want to do is put anybody into harm's way. So if you're a ship owner, you're going to say, all right, boys, go and girls, go out there. You got to make sure it's safe. That said, you have a very large crude carrier worth, 100 to 150 million dollars. You better hope you're insured on that, and your insurance is up to date. If you can get insurance, I'm sure somebody will give you insurance, but that's a whopper of a bill to insure your ship to go through there. That's if you deem it safe. Now, how do we know it's safe? Well, we don't, and I don't know if we will for a while. Whenever we have conflicts like this, there's always rogue actors. The sort of the guys who are still fighting the battle after the battle has been declared over or peace had been done. So, 10 ships may go through and then one may get hit. We don't know, and I can't forecast that. No one knows that. So that's a possibility. But, safety, is it safe? Your mariners, your ship, your product, and all that. So then, besides that, I mean, before all these ships start moving through there, I mean, the shipping industry is repositioned all over the world to avoid this area. So it's not like you're going to say, all right, we'll be there tomorrow and my ship's there and going to fill up on crude and take off. I mean, that's going to take a while to get back. Once again, that doesn't account for the infrastructure that needs to be rebuilt and all that within that, 18 to 22 weeks. That's, obviously it doesn't take 22 weeks to get a ship there, but, prior commitments and your deviations have to be, rejiggered so that you can get there. And once that happens and we get product, we still got to get it to the refinery. The people who have been short of oil or buying oil from different places and all the alterations in your typical, business as usual has to be reverted, back to normal. And that takes a while also. So the strait may open, shipping may begin again. It's still going to be a while until the global petroleum complex gets back to, its typical modes of operation and production.
Yeah, it's a long road ahead of us, that's for certain. Thank you so much, Tom.
Great to be with you, Reagan.
We hope you've enjoyed today's insider conversation on OPIS Talks. Join us next time for a deep dive into another industry insider's world. You can find more Opus Talks episodes at opusnet.com/podcasts or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.